I got to watch glimpses in between all of these meetings that I just told you about. I got to watch glimpses of what is taking place, wasting time in Washington. And I watched, they don't talk about my conversation. They don't talk about my transcripts.
And Thane Rosenbaum, CBS News radio legal analyst and distinguished university professor at Touro College, joins us live in studio. Thane, it seems like the president can't escape any signs of impeachment, even halfway around the world.
Yes, it's the news of the day, even in another continent. Hi, Emma. Hi, Sean. It's nice, it's nice seeing you both.
Good to have you here as well. So how do you think the president's handling this real quick? A lot obviously happening here in the States. He's in Davos trying to essentially do his job still, as he's still the president of the United States. There are still things that need to be done. There was talk about how he could manage his emotion, if you will, as this is playing out before him, but still trying to do his job. How's he doing?
Well, you know, our president, you know, he's a phrase man, right? He told us, make America great again during the Mueller investigation. He said no collusion, and now he's saying no quid pro quo. So he simplified the argument. He's saying, I have nothing to fear. Listen to the actual transcript of the conversation. There is a position that the Republicans are taking within the White House to say, hey, America, this is how foreign policy gets made. These are the kinds of phone calls that happen. It may not look pretty, but it looks a lot like that. And so let the president do his job. And that's essentially how they've simplified the argument, to say it may seem unseemly to you, but this is a political process, foreign policy. And by the way, so is this impeachment hearing, right? The trial itself is a political process, not a legal process, which is why I thought it was interesting when Chief Justice Roberts admonished the Senate. You know, he's thinking of an Article III court that has decorum. This is a rancorous Senate. The people don't like each other. Emma told us they're high on sugar from eating candy last night. You know, this emotions, it's 2 in the morning. What did you think was going to happen? And that's what we saw.
Well, let's talk about it moving forward and break it down. They've been given, you know, a set amount of time, but do we think the Democrats and both Republicans will be using that set time, 24 hours, over a span of 3 days?
Yes, I do. I also think, remember, yesterday, it's just fascinating. It went till 2 in the morning, and it was a procedural argument. All of it was about procedures, rules. But in arguing procedure, they were arguing the merits of the case, right? They were still making the same argument. So as far as I'm concerned, the Democrats actually had an extra day. But so did the Republicans, so did the White House, have an extra day in making their arguments. Remember, this is not a court of law, so the jurors are not impartial, right? The jurors of the Senate, they're not sequestered. They're watching NewsMax right now, right? So everyone has their point of view, and the more they continue to repeat their themes, there's no reason to leave any time on the table. I suspect they're going to go the distance.
Thane, I want to ask you this, and just a little bit of pushback. Some would say they would be critical of the president's defense team. And I say that because if you're watching, you may have seen that the prosecution laid out a very a legal standpoint. And then if some would say that his defense attorneys are kind of doing it for television. Do you agree on any of that? Do you feel like the Democrats have put together a better case?
Sean, there's no doubt. The law professor in me will tell you that the Democrats did better yesterday for the very reasons that you said. They presented themselves as a prosecutorial team, focused on the evidence, focused on gathering more evidence. And essentially, even though they had no access to the evidence, they were essentially telling us, they were summarizing for us what the evidence would do. By the way, that sort of thing in a court of law wouldn't work because you still have to produce the evidence. Here, as long as the Senate heard it, it might have had an effect on them. But again, it's a political process, so it makes sense to me that the president's lawyers would try to simplify the case. And since it's the Democrats that are looking for more witnesses and more evidence, they're trying to make it more complicated in order to substantiate why they need these witnesses and why they have to justify the reason they're making this case.
Sure. We'll watch how it all plays out. Thane Rosenbaum, thanks so much for joining us in
Sean.
studio.